Exercise 20-25. We're going to create the production cost report, but this time it's going to be for the second department, not the first department. So Pierce Spring Company produces premium bottled water. In the second department, called the bottling department, conversion costs are incurred evenly throughout the bottling process, but packaging materials, which is the bottle, are not added until the end of the process. And that makes sense. When you're bottling water, the bottle is probably the last part of the process. So in Excel, I've created some T accounts to kind of show the flow of costs. So raw materials are our first cost, and that's probably going to be the water, and who knows what they're mixing. By the way, the mixing department is the first process. We don't know what they're mixing. Maybe they're mixing the water with carbonation or electrolytes or whatever. So in the first process, they mix the raw materials. In the second process, which is what we're doing this production cost report for, is the bottling department. So they take the units from the mixing department, so the mixed liquid, and they're going to put them in the bottle. And the bottle is the only direct material in the bottling department, and that comes at the very end of the process. And then from there, once they're bottled, they go into the finished goods inventory. So as always, with the production cost report, we're going to start with units. So we need our extra information, and we just need to look at the units. We don't look at the costs yet. So this is all cost information over here, so we can ignore that for now. We're only looking at the units. So our beginning inventory had 4,000 units. So notice, so we can visualize what's going on, I put beginning balance 4,000 units here. Production was started of 166,000 units. So here's our units started. So our units to account for are these two added together, 4,000 units plus 166,000 units. So we can put in our labels. Units to account for are the beginning work in process units plus the transferred in units. Remember, these units that are started are actually just the units that have been completed in the mixing department are transferred in. The bottling department just doesn't start units on its own. It can only start units that are transferred in from the mixing department. So that gives us a total of 170,000 units to account for. So let me put in my units. Copy, paste, copy, paste. So we've got 170,000 units to account for. Now I need to scroll down. And now we have the units to account for. So units to account for, as you recall, are the units transferred out and the ending balance. So notice the units to account for, right here, 170,000, has to be equal to the units to account for. 150,000 plus 20,000 is 170,000. Now, where did I get the 150 and the 20 from? Well, it's just came from the data box. So transferred out, we had 150,000. Now notice these are whole units. We'll get to the equivalent units next. And our units that were in ending balance are 20,000. So the labels are completed and transferred out, which I get from right here. And then ending inventory is called ending work in process. Copy, paste. So again, the units to account for, 170,000, has to be the same as units accounted for. All right, now we're going to go to equivalent units of production. So let's just talk about these transferred in costs. Transferred in costs are just talking about the costs transferred in from the previous department. So these costs that were transferred in from the previous department, what percentage of them are going to continue into the bottling department? Well, 100% of them. You're not going to get rid of any of those costs. So transferred in costs are always the same, or I should say are always 100% of the whole units. So we can just copy this information. Now let's talk about completed and transferred out. So these 150,000 units that were transferred out, they are 100% complete. How do we know they're complete? Well, they're not going to be transferred out unless they're complete. So we know by definition these are completed, and of course it even says they're completed. So what percentage of these costs are going to continue? Well, 100%. So we just copy this, paste here, paste here. Now let's talk about direct materials. So notice we're working on the ending work in process. So this ending work in process, in other words, the ending inventory, is only 70% complete. So the question is, where in the timeline do the direct materials get added? Well, direct materials, which is the packaging, basically the bottle, are not added until the end of the process. So these units, the ending inventory, are only 70% complete. They are not at the end. Because they're 70% complete, that means they are not in the bottles. So the percentage is 0. 0% of 20,000 is 0. So we've got 150,000 units to account for. Now let's talk about the conversion costs. Again, we're talking about the ending work in process, which is right here. So of these 20,000 whole units, they are only 70% complete through the bottling process. So we have to figure out, well, what percentage of the conversion costs, remember we're working on conversion costs here, this column here, what percentage of the conversion costs are they going to have? Well, they're 70% complete, and conversion costs are incurred evenly throughout the bottling process. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 20,000, which is this number, which we plopped here. We're going to take 20,000 times the 70%. So 20,000 times 0.7 gives us 14,000 bottles, equivalent units of production. So that's saying what the 14,000 means is 20,000 bottles that are 70% complete for conversion costs are the equivalent of 14,000 bottles 100% complete for conversion costs. And then we're just going to add 150,000 plus 14,000 gives us 164,000. Okay, in the next video we're going to continue and we're going to do the costs. So right here all we've done is just the equivalent units.